In this episode of Saving 22 podcast, I have John Dawson, Army veteran, Vietnam, and he's also a current mentor for Camel Corps. He talks about what PTSD did to him, how it affected his family, because there's a reason why D, stands for disease, because it absolutely spreads, and it is spread throughout his family. And when you get back and you're fighting through whatever, trying to figure out what you just went through, plus, in his era, he was not welcomed home. It was a very traumatic experience. Oftentimes you're on your own island, and that's never a great, healthy mental place. And so he describes what he went through and how it affected his family life, when he got back. And some of his family still doesn't talk to him to this day. And that's a very common thing when you're facing, war, coming home, and also when you have to deal with brothers did not, sisters did not. That's a special kind of head mess, right? So as a mentor, John is able to utilize those experiences, whether it was being deployed downrange or when he got home, and the things that he went through and his reactions and his false beliefs. It's a very common thing when you're not healthy mentally that you quarantine yourself. You set yourself aside and push everybody away. Which is the worst thing you can do. For whatever reason, we get to believe in that people don't are better off without us, and it's just not true. And that's what's beautiful thing about his story, is that as he's mentoring others in his everyday day to day, he's able to relate and hopefully help someone in the audience understand. I was like, okay, yeah, what I'm going through it's pretty much yuck, but I can get through this, and that's what this is all about.
I grew up in a small town, mountain town in Northern California. Graduated high school in 1970. This is back in a time where we had two options coming out of high school. One was either go into the military or go to college. Um, I told my parents I happened to feel that I probably could not maintain the grade average in college to keep me from the drafts and not to waste their money. So I joined the Army to avoid being drafted. September 1970. Went through basic training in my AIT, and by January I was in Vietnam. Uh, Short story, I left Vietnam about 90 plus days later and went back to where I was sent from, and they just backed up the records and then sent me to a stateside truck company, transportation, driving truck. After that, I got straightened out on the MOSs I was supposed to have and decided I'd stay a while, and ended up staying in the Army 11 years. um, Only in the Army, I actually went from being a truck driver to being in nuclear weapons. And naturally, many qualifications to do that, but I come to do very well. And at the point I'm at right now, I can look back and attribute some of this to some forms of PTSD. Kind of made me an overachiever. But I liked advancing in the Army, felt I needed to advance in the Army, and I did so rather fast. And by the time I was 8 years in, I was qualified for recruiting, and I became a recruiter and ended my career doing that.
So if you can kind of, just kind of talk about how you're in country for 3 months, I'm sorry, and kind of how it was, what was life like while you're in theater?
To start out, you're very confused. You're a young, your first time over. actually still a young trainee that is just sent into a war zone. You're confused. Basically, I didn't even know where I was most of the time, but you adapt and you start to learn your job and your do's and your don'ts and who's who, first of all, and then when things do happen, you know what to do and with who and where, which is extremely important for all of you that's been to war. You know what I'm talking about. But um, you do that. You create bonds too. At the same time, it's hard to explain, but you don't create a bond as well. But while you're in theater, you do, knowing good and well you're, for one reason or another, probably never going to see these people again. We go back home. We go on our ways, or you don't. But as far as uh, what happens there, it's war, and you're involved in it at some level or another. Whether you're in a support situation, you can get into a bad situation, or you're in the MOS where you're supposed to be in a bad situation. And it's really kind of hard to wrap your head around until you've been there a while and you get climatized a little bit. But you uh, don't know how you really, the bonds you created until you leave. And when you do, that's you come back home, and this is where PTSD on everybody hits, is you come home and it's a different world to you. And I believe the biggest set off and factors in uh, PTSD and returning home is shame and guilt. You have often a survivor guilt that your buddies are still over there, but just you're here. Why you? Why me? Why my buddy ain't gonna make it back, but I did. Why? And that's hard to wrap your head around. But you go on living with that. You can't really talk to anybody or explain an exact situation because it involves a feeling, not just a situation. And PTSD on this level will eat you up if you don't find somebody maybe you can talk with or get some help. But a veteran's not going to ask for help. And so many times right now, a veteran is forced into help by some instance or another. They either pick up an addiction to a drug or alcohol or both, get in trouble, and then you end up in the court system, which brings us to a camo court for veterans. Many before this didn't have anything that was available, and you just end up in the streets. And that's why you see so many veterans on the street. They don't understand there's help, or they don't want the help. They don't believe. And this is where we need to reach out.
You were in that position of where you didn't feel that you were, worthy of it. But now that you're in the position of mentorship, how do you, how do you take that knowledge, that experience, and put it toward a veteran coming back who feels that they're not worthy, and how do you try and explain to them that they are, then they're most, that it's meant most for them?
I think, first of all, it can relate. Even though we're generations apart, and we have the same inner feeling, we have the same experiences coming home. And I can tell them it is okay to ask for help. It is not a weakness to take the help. And that's huge for a veteran. That I'm okay, I don't need any help, others need help. Well, that in itself is a sign that you got a little PTSD and you probably need a little help. And these are things that I've been through, fought with, tried to ignore. Back in the early 70s, we didn't know there was PTSD. We knew there was something wrong, but we didn't know that we could fix it. We just found a way to live with it. And I know some veterans today that have been through some bad stuff, and they say they have no effects at all. That's very possible, and God bless them if they can do that and come out and handle it. That's good, but the majority of us cannot, and that's where we need some help. We need to throw more people into it, which we do. We have a good volunteer system, but I think somewhere along the line we need to throw a little money at it, and we need to put some more people one-on-one with the veterans and be available, which is what the Camo Court is just great about. The mentorship is great about. We're not a counselor. They understand. We're not a sponsor. We're just there to show we got your back. And I've seen where that's made a big difference to some of them, a lot of them.
Yeah, I got your six is a huge thing.
Yes. And we even stand up with them and stand behind them in front of the judge. Got your back. These are the things that are huge for a veteran. It seems so little, minuscule, but probably one of the most important things in a combat situation that you can have going on is to know somebody's got your back. And we do here at home too.
What does it mean to someone who's a younger generation, who's a vet, but they see you being a Vietnam vet, being that era and going through for the 11 years? How does that work in your dealings with a vet that's going through some real mess?
I can go back to what it was like in the early 70s. It was a war protest era. Veterans and military were not highly looked upon, to say the least, and actually to a point that it was hard to wear your uniform in public. Now, that's a coming home transition. On top of what all we had to face inside was, what do we have here when we get home? And so many times, even on applications, we wouldn't answer the question of if you're a veteran. That's how bad things were at that point. Now, to bring that to today and seeing, number one, I'm just so glad that veterans are welcomed home the way they are. This has opened up a lot of Vietnam veterans also to, yeah, we're wearing our colors. Pride. We can finally have some pride. And I think this is another thing to try to instill into the new veteran is be proud of what you did. You need some help, get some help, but don't feel that nobody can understand or appreciate what you're going through and what you've been through and what you're going to go through. And that's huge right there, is to try to explain what they're going to go through. And that what's happening to you is not unusual. And that's the number one thing. They feel alone, lost all hope, and they're not afraid to pull the trigger. A veteran is not afraid to pull the trigger.
What were some of the instances, if I may, when you come back from Vietnam, wearing your uniform at that time? Did you have any negative? Experiences?
Excuse me. Absolutely. and the biggest one was during that era we did a lot of funeral duty, and that's probably where we got the biggest don't want to call it hate, but reaction. Uh, Mom will come up and slap your face because you got here with your medals. My son didn't. That kind of thing. And that I can understand. And that's fine. She's right. But you take just an average protester that wants to come up and spit on your uniform, that's a different story. They have no idea what the war was, what it was like, why you're there, what you're doing. You're not standing there with all your ribbons because you're proud and showing off. You're standing there because you got your ribbons and you're wearing your uniform. There's a reason you got the ribbons. And it's not about being a hero where I can do this and come out with this medal and your son didn't even get to come home. Yeah, we feel very, I feel, you can tell, very deep about it, but there's nothing you can say or do. Your orders are to stand there and take it. And that's what we did, but we lived with that as well. But we'll go back to survivor guilt. There's a huge survivor guilt placed on you in situations like that. And I'm sure a veteran, even still today, moms and dads, they don't understand why their son didn't get to come home, but you did. And that puts a guilt and even a shame on you that you got to live with. And some can't. They need help. But that's the first thing to try to understand, that it's not your fault. You did your job and you did it well and rolled the dice and you came home. And that's the biggest thing to try to tell them. And the number one thing that they can't tell us is that you don't understand. We do, and we got your back.
Talk a little bit, if you would please. You're saying that your assimilation was, not not didn't go well. Can you kind of talk about what was going through your mind? The things that you try to balance and fill that void. I mean, how was your assimilation into civilian life?
For me personally, my idea was to stay busy. When I had this feeling of doing well with what I do very well. And I would just roll with that. And that would keep my mind busy, that I would get to where I'd be in a job and feel I've gone as far as I can go. It's not enough. I need to go more. I need to go more. And I would fill my mind and fill my days and nights. And what I didn't realize, even that my family was actually suffering from that as well, where I was doing it for their benefit, I felt. In reality, when I got to look back, it wasn't what it was at all. But I truly believed that and felt that. And that's the thing with, understand with veterans too, their feelings are very real. They feel this, they believe it. They're not just, well, I'm having a bad day and this ain't going right. And it's a feeling of what you're going to do with your life. And you got to come up with some way to cope with this. And number one is kind of jumping ahead maybe a little bit, but the veteran needs to be educated in what is wrong with him on his own personal level, what is wrong and where can I go with this? And there's so many good programs to do this, and we just need to reach, I mean, through the VA itself. They can guide you to these programs. They even have their own AA set up. They have tons of mental help all you got to do is just tell them you have a problem. They'll figure out how deep it is, and we'll put you in the right direction.
So you've had positive experiences with the VA?
I have. I with today's VA, I'm very pleased with them. I actually have a monitor right over here that I am hooked up to Helena every night. I go through a PTSD lesson, and at the end have my blood pressure taken, and this is monitored from Helena. This is how far it can go, that you can be monitored on a daily basis. And this coordinator will call you, or you can feel free to call them, and if they see there's a problem, they will immediately direct you to somebody to help you, the right person. A veteran needs to know there's tons of things that the VA can do for you. A lot of them haven't had good experiences, and just because one thing doesn't work out, or you had one bad experience with a doctor or denied a certain thing, it's just be a little more persistent and go back. They will help you.
The self-pride thing is a double-edged sword. We have great pride in ourselves. We have such belief in ourselves that we can get through anything, and we will persist. But it's we have someone else's back, but we don't really have a way to accept the support. And God forbid somebody mess up and not really understand. Well, then it's a cutoff. So how do we get, if that all makes sense, how do we get past that short rope, that short-sightedness, the short temper, all that? How do we get past and accept failure on someone else's behalf when it's really trying to get us squared away?
Well, I think what we're doing now is not we, but treatment-wise, I think we're trying to go full circle to bring them back. There are treatment programs. I've been through treatment programs as far as addiction treatments. And that program will take you right back to where the VA will pick this up and say, okay, now we know where you're at. We've gotten rid of a part of this. Now let's keep monitoring this. And I think that's big. Monitoring such as I have, or there's other ways too. This isn't too big a deal. It takes you through. It does some more explaining of PTSD, which I don't think you can get enough education when it involves your life. The more you can understand about your situation, the better. I understand you hear a lot of people that say, well, that's not my situation, that don't work for me. Well, this is exactly what we got to figure out, is put more time on an individual basis to figure out what exactly is their deep-rooted problem. Treatment programs can do this.
In the military, it teaches you pride of ownership. That's everything. It's from your uniform to just your military bearing. It's how you conduct yourself. So the pride of ownership. Does the pride of ownership and the pride of a soldier, the pride of a soldier, is that what gets in the way?
To a degree, it does. Because pride and ownership is what kept you going to begin with. And you get back home and that gets taken away from you, it's a pretty big loss. to a point where some people, of course, feel they have nothing because that's been taken away. That was all I had. I had, just as my situation where I did very well in the military, and I come home and all of a sudden I'm not doing well at all. I can't get nothing going. Nobody cares. You don't want to throw that in too much. I mean, you can say nobody cares. There are people that care, but then there are people saying, why can't you get a decent job? Why can't you do this? Why can't you do that? Well, that digs on that pride to a point that it'll go away. And I think that's very damaging to a veteran. Don't lose your pride. Yeah. After all this time, I want you to understand another difference with the Vietnam veteran and today is we waited all this time to get our pride back. Where we've had it, but we want to show it, and now we can because of you new veterans. But yeah, pride's huge too.
Talk about your addictions, please. Why did you get caught up in it, and what did it lead to, and how is it helping you today, please?
I guess first of all, it's very easy to get addicted in a military situation. I'm not sure how easy it is today. Back in my era when I was coming up, drinking was the thing you do. That's just what you do when you're done with work. You're out with the buddies, and no age limit. If you got a uniform on, you can get a drink. That's what we did. Well, naturally, many returning veterans, when you're a rookie, still, they're using this as a form of fighting their PTSD. Well, you just happen to fall right into that and get the same addiction, but for different reasons. But when you come back, I had found myself, you don't think about the drinking or drugs because it's a normal thing that you do and try to not get caught at. But then the long-term toll was where I had got to a point where I found I needed to drink more and more so I could go to sleep at night and not have a nightmare. And I've come to find out this wasn't entirely just for me. This is something that many are doing. And which is, I've learned to understand with education of PTSD that actually the alcohol was feeding the PTSD symptoms and the PTSD was feeding into the alcoholism. So you got a vicious circle unless you stop it somewhere. And getting educated on it, just helped me tremendously. You get this aha moment where you feel, okay, I got this now. Number one is stop this addiction. Stop drinking and stop feeding the problem. And once you do that, you can start healing. You really can.
What was your aha moment?
Well, naturally, you get in trouble so many times, but one day you just wake up and say, this isn't fun anymore. This is very serious, and I've had enough. But then I go to the treatment and where counselors talk about the PTSD and the feeding it. That was my aha moment, and that's why I guess I bring it up so much, is that how one feeds the other, which made perfect sense to me. And then that was my aha moment of quit feeding it. And the only way to do that is get some help and take care of your addictions.
When you take something away, like your addiction, now you have a void. So you took away your addiction. What filled that void?
Ah, that's very good. Well, for myself, I'm trying to think how far back where I really started dealing with this. Just keep your mind busy. Uh, you lost everything out of it, if you can't hang out with friends, you have to change that. Uh, Many of your friends are toxic to you that you don't understand. Excuse me. I got a dog. I did that through a veteran-related program as well.
Go ahead and mention it, because we're doing a story on it, if you don't mind. I mean,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dog Tag Buddies. And excellent program. And just briefly to explain some of that is you rescue a dog, and they actually take you through training where you train with your dog to be yours personally, to behave. And it's not a trained dog handed over to you. You do your own training to bond with this dog. And that's filled a big void. And your dog will get to the point that it'll see when you have issues. You have some anxieties, and your legs shaking and so forth, and a dog will read that and come to you. It's my dog is my other half here. That's one way I've done it, and the other is to build new friends in situations that are not toxic. There are many ways you can do it. You can fill it with church. You can fill it with meetings. You can do AA. I don't do any one of those in particular. I do them all a little bit. And that way I can keep my busy mind occupied. Don't let it get idle.
The atrocities that you saw over there and heard about, how do you come back and be a human?
Quite honestly, I didn't. I stayed in. I didn't have to associate with the civilian life. I chose to stay in the military because I understood them, they understood me. And that may have saved my life, I don't know. But I stayed 11 years. Then realized I didn't like it.
Something that's it's interesting is that if you go crazy, then there's a Section 8, and then they separate those individuals from the pack, from the herd, and then they start. Can you kind of talk about how dealing with the mental issues of a soldier is dealt with in after action review? Is there a better way that could be done, or is it a pretty okay way?
Oh, actually, I'm not real familiar with the new way, but in the old day, Section 8 was pretty rare. You had to really be over the hill to get a Section 8. And when the draft was going on, that was the entire difference. It was completely backwards. Instead of you proving that you had the background and you had what it takes, you had to prove that you could be in the military. During the draft, you have to prove why you can't be in the military if you want to stay out. You just have no choice. So if you didn't have any prior mental problems, you didn't have any reason whatsoever that you couldn't go into the military, you were drafted. And that's what everybody strived for there. And that's why there was so much protest and so forth, that people didn't think that was right, that you should be drafted. And, the whole deal, everybody ran to Canada and burnt their draft cards and so forth. But it didn't work. Eventually, they're going to catch up to you. But today, I've seen people. I think you can relate to this, that even basic training can be traumatic to them. It could actually cause some PTSD to some people when they had no clue going in what it was going to be about, and then found out this is pretty tough stuff, and have actually gotten uh, mental or discharges right out of basic training. And that wasn't the norm back in our day. Everybody made it through basic training, unless you were. They found a definite mental imbalance.
What was okay, coming back to the rear, after being sent down range, I'm sure you saw plenty of people who were just not right mentally.
Absolutely.
Can you can you describe what the danger is, what the just the environment? Can you describe the environment? It's like, okay, so they come back taking the risks, causing danger, causing unnecessary harm, unnecessary risks that bring all that. Can you just kind of describe that environment, please? What a damaged soldier looks like who's still, forced to perform.
Um, yeah. Excuse me. And it's at first a very scary thing, actually. Uh, when you're brand new in country and you're working with or for somebody that's been there 2 years, and you find out they're on all kinds of drugs. Heroin was huge. Some of them had to be on heroin or pot or uh, something pretty strong to do the things they're required to do. And they would do this, and they would get a hyped up mental state and go into action. And when you first see this is very scary. Uh, is that what I have to do? Do I have to be that way? Am I going to be like that when I leave here? Is this how you survive? You don't know. But these people are not making any sense to you. Uh, the things that they do, you wonder why they're still there. And you really get the law enforcement part of it out of there as far as this is being illegal. It is illegal, and it was then. But a lot of heads are turned when people have to fight a war. Things that are illegal are a norm. Don't ask, don't tell. And that's goes way deep. And there are some you don't, coming in especially brand new and all down through, you don't bring this up, you don't mention it, you don't talk to the person about it, you don't talk to anybody about it, or you may not be around very long. I hate to get that blunt with it, but that's the case. That's what you deal with. You don't ask, you don't tell, or you may not come back. There's those situations. And these people, now imagine this person that addicted, that dependent on surviving using the drug, and they come back home. You can only imagine the problems that they've run into and why they can't cope, and who is going to step up and fix that. Try to talk to that man about counseling. I don't know if that still happens with today's military. I don't know, and I shouldn't know.
Because of your addictions and your mentality, your mental state. So you talked about your family. How's your family life now? How did your kids turn out? How did your ex-wife turn out, if I may?
I've had two ex-wives now. I got 3 kids with one and 2 with the other. Neither marriage worked out for me. Uh, the kids were brought up without me, and some of them, which understandably have issues with that. And I only have a couple that really talk to me as far as my kids. So that's how damaging it can be to relationships. And myself at the time, in some situations, still do think that I was doing the right thing. That this is what I was supposed to do in this relationship. Here's this wonderful family, but they deserve better than me, was my feeling. They deserve better, and I need to go try to make this better, but to leave them alone out of it. And that's what I truly felt I had to do. And that's what I did. And with the wives, of course, it definitely built some resentment. That's understandable. And it was passed on to the kids. And I wasn't very good about staying in contact and staying toe-to-toe to fight this. It just felt like a losing battle, and so I'd try other ways to go around it and come back.
Okay, so when you got out of the Army, did you move back home to Northern California?
No, I didn't. I was actually in Kansas as a recruiter when I got out of the Army, and I stayed there. I remarried. I had kids. I was actually in law enforcement for 4 years there. Let's add some more trauma. Veterans do tend to make good law enforcement officers, though. After that, I went back to Oregon, where my family's still West Coast. They're California and Oregon. But I went to Oregon to spend some time with my mom. She's older. My dad had died. In the later years, I didn't get to spend a lot of time with them, so I did that. And that became very rough as well. Couldn't find any jobs out there. I at one time worked 4 part-time jobs to try to keep everybody happy and myself fed and clothed and feed my addiction. Same thing there. I drank pretty heavy. And then I finally got the click where this isn't enough. I think the thing that I need is more education. And that was back in 1999, and I went back down to California, and I went to near Humboldt State University, where there was not only a good veterans office, but there was also a Vietnam Veterans of California program. And I got with them, and I told them I want some more education. I'm just not, I'm not making it. I think the holdback is that I need to finish out my education and then go out and hit it again. And then is where the ton of questions came in from the VA and where I was actually diagnosed with the PTSD. Once again, the fact that I needed to improve and do better, where they've looked back and just as I said, I've walked away from jobs and situations that people would kill to have. And they pointed that out to me. That was another aha moment. Where yes, that's exactly right. And when those situations didn't work out, I'd feed my addiction some more. And then I'd feed that PTSD off of the addiction again. So they gave me a program uh, where I could. They were almost to a point that they were going to give me disability off of it, and then they decided that I was still pretty mainstream. I just had these issues with it. I needed my life fulfilled a little more with. Try not to leave things to do better and do more and give up. So they actually gave me an option of taking a program of being an airline flight dispatcher, which was a career field that you could advance into as far as you wanted to advance without leaving the field. And they thought, well, maybe we'll retrain him back into society this way. And they did. They sent me to Texas, where I had no idea about aviation whatsoever. And there was about two of us in the class that's that way, and everybody else was uh, pretty up on it. And it was hard, but uh, for me, it's failure's not an option. And I did it. I made it through. It was very tough. Everybody else was out partying, and I actually stayed. Had to do the additional homework, do the additional studying, and it was good for me. And then I got it, and in this program, it's where the airlines actually come to the school for recruits for dispatchers for their airline. And I was offered a couple different positions, and one of them was here in Billings, Montana. And I came up and did the interview and looked around and said, yeah, this is the one I want. Of course, 9/11 hit and put all the airlines into a frizzy. A lot of them closed down, and this particular one didn't make it. Made it about a year after, and that was it. But I had when we shut down, I tried to find something else. I had to decide, either I go to a bigger city doing the same thing I'm doing, or do something else and stay here. Well, here I am.
What did you find to do?
Uh, Same thing, about four different jobs, four part-time jobs, whatever it took again to survive. Here we were, back on the street, so to speak, which veterans are. And if there's not immediate job around, it's hard. You just stay on the street.
So you were homeless?
I yeah. The thing that kept me from it was I knew people. I could get roommates. I could do this. I could make it. I bartended. I did whatever I could. I had that in my background as a fallback, and I could sell cars. That was a fallback too. So I could eventually get work and something I could do, but it just wasn't a field I wanted to make a living at. I mean, bartending and alcoholism isn't probably a good combination, but
Or cars when it's all mixed together?
yeah, yeah. Driving brand new cars, and uh, that's kind of how I survived until I finally got a job as building maintenance for property management company, and I just did the rest of my working time on out doing that. I did that for about 10 years until I got hurt. I got hurt and had to retire, do an early retirement. I blew a couple discs in my back, which the VA was awesome at fixing. Once again, I'm back there. That was actually my first real deal with the VA here, and they handled that so well. I was so impressed. swallow that pride and go back and get the help. And I think that was the best move I ever made. I did end up in trouble and went through treatment. And I don't recommend the trouble part, but I do recommend the treatment part. That treatment was a real life changer for me, where you do an intensive outpatient where they make you dig down and find that inner core problem and help you bring it out. And I so wish there were separate programs without having to get in trouble that veterans could go through that would do that deep reach down, find your core problem and bring it out.
When you went to Vietnam, you had your orders. When you come back from Vietnam and went to your units, you had your orders. Where are you going to? Who to report to? What time? And all that stuff. You get your ETS date. It's a finish line. It's like, nah, man, I finally made it. Now I'm, PFC, proud freaking civilian.
Yeah.
That kind of a thing. How do you go from a finish line and like now all of a sudden now it's open into getting their mind right? Anyway.
Yeah. I know what you're saying. That is the tough one. A lot of guys will have something already lined up or going or have already talked to people or are already even a part of what they're going to do when they get out. Others just want out, and they have nothing set up, nothing going for them, just time to be done with your military service. See where we go from here, and that is so dangerous. Let's see where we go from here. But they do, and you're right. They're so used to being in a structured situation that you wake up one day and all of a sudden you have nothing, nobody to report to, nothing to do. Let's see, I gotta live. I probably should go out and find a job. You got to think this through, because like you said, it's it's a start-finish line. You finish this and you're going to start here. Now, how are you going to do that? I just ended what I was doing by the skin of my teeth, and now I'm a civilian. And luckily, I had been talking to Lockheed and had this great job lined up. Or get the guy that got out and says, I'm not going to do nothing for a month, 2 months. And then, boy, after that 2 months, you're like, I'm a little dirty and need some food. And you got to go out and start looking. And then that's where I think more depression sets in as well, because you're not going to ask for help, even though you realize that, I might need some help with this. I can't find a job. I can't get anything. Oh, well, who cares? Well, you got to understand that people do care. And there are separate veteran-affiliated programs, but not necessarily veteran-supported or funded. But there, you'll find that you'll be amazed at how many people care, how many have started programs for veterans that are not a veteran funded program. They get their own funding to do all this. Like I said, I haven't had it here, but in California we had, like I was talking about, the Vietnam Veterans of California. It's not a veteran-funded organization, but it is. They do go out and get their own funding, and they do a lot for veterans. Where the VA at that time had an overflow, and Vietnam Veterans California would pick that overflow up. And these are all ex-veterans themselves, or veterans themselves. They're ex-military, and They know where to go if you need problems with your getting your 214, getting paperwork that you need. They do this, and now the VA itself is very good at doing this with you too. Uh, you can tell I'm pretty hooked on the VA, but here in Billings especially, they got a very good program and nice facilities and old veterans. We've seen some situations in VAs that were barely a wooden shack that would recommend things to you or send you to a bigger city where you're a number in line, and you work through it. It was just a really bad situation. But today, I believe it's so helpful physically in the mental programs, and much bigger in the mental programs now than they've ever been. But there is a ton of things for veterans to reach out.
That was John's story. Thank you for watching. Greatly appreciate it. Make sure to subscribe, like, and share. That'll help us out. And because Saving 22 podcast, it's creating community. That we are, we as veterans, we're already a community, but it's just trying to be that, bulletin board. It's like, hey, this is what's going on. This is what's out there for us. And if you need it, give them a call. Give someone a call. And or as you listen to some of these people's testimonies, it's like, yeah, that's what I went through. And or maybe it'll encourage you for the day, or something that keeps you going. And so that's what Saving 22 podcast is all about. It's like bringing a community together and helping each other keep moving forward.